Audiobook, The Belgrade Dark Sun. Narrator's note: read with a gravelly, noir-inspired tone. Pace should be deliberate, with heavy pauses after moments of tension. Chapter 1: The Golden Illusion. The Belgrade Sun. That afternoon, it wasn't just light. It was an avalanche of molten gold spilling across the polished marble of my living room. It caught the dust motes, turning them into transient stars, a galaxy born and destroyed in a single heartbeat. I watched them, thinking how easy it is to ignore the dark when the light is this beautiful. Yelena moved through that light like a vision in crimson silk. The fabric hissed against the floor, a soft, rhythmic warning I was too blinded to heed. Her laughter was a melody that always found the jagged edges of my soul and smoothed them over. "Marco's party tonight, Nicola," she said, her voice a soft caress as she poured 2 glasses of rakicha. The amber liquid glinted in the crystal, a liquid promise of warmth. "You'll be late if you don't hurry." I took the glass. The coolness of the crystal was a stark lie compared to the burning liquid within. I traced the rim with my thumb, watching her. "Just a quick stop, my love. A necessary evil. Politicians and their peacock displays. They need to see my face so they can remember who to fear and who to flatter." She leaned against me, and for a moment, the world outside the corruption, the gray concrete of New Belgrade, the whispering shadows ceased to exist. Her scent was a blend of jasmine and something uniquely hers. "Don't stay too long," she whispered, a playful glint in her eyes. "I have a surprise waiting." I kissed her forehead. The silk of her dress was cool against my skin. "I'll be back before midnight. You know I can't resist your surprises." As I walked to the garage, the Mercedes S-Class felt like a tomb of black steel. The drive to Marco's villa cut through the heart of the city. Usually, Belgrade is a riot of sound horns, shouting, the pulse of a city that never learned how to sleep. But tonight, the streets held their breath. An eerie anticipation hung heavy in the humid air. Marco's estate sat atop a hill overlooking the confluence of the Sava and the Danube. It glowed like a beacon of arrogance. I parked among a fleet of luxury vehicles, each a statement of stolen power, each a trophy of a nation's struggle. The heavy oak doors swung open, and I was hit by the scent of expensive perfume, Cuban cigars, and the metallic tang of underlying ambition. A string quartet played a melancholic tune from a balcony. It sounded like a funeral march played at double speed. Marco appeared at my side like a shark surfacing from dark water. His suit was tailored to perfection, but his smile was a practiced, predatory flash. "Nicola, my friend, the man of the hour." His hand gripped my shoulder. It was surprisingly cold. "Yelena not joining us?" "She sends her regards," I replied, my gaze level. "A quiet evening at home." "A pity. Her beauty always brightens these dull affairs." He steered me deeper into the throng. "Come, Nicola. I have someone you need to meet. Someone who understands the real price of the future." Chapter 2: The Veiled Hand. He led me to a secluded annex, far from the prying eyes of minor ministers and socialites. Here, the chandeliers were dimmed. The atmosphere shifted from opulent to clandestine. Plush velvet couches encircled an ornate table laden with exotic fruits and decanters of crimson wine. 3 women reclined there. They were visions of sculpted beauty, but their eyes were like polished obsidian. Cold, ancient, knowing. These are special guests, Nicola, Marco whispered, his voice a silken thread. A reward for your tireless service to the nation. Choose, my friend, any one of them. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't a party. This was a marketplace. And I was the one being bought. Marco, you always outdo yourself. I forced a smile, a mask to hide the sudden chill. But I'm afraid I must decline. Yelena awaits. Marco's smile didn't falter, but something dark flickered in his eyes, a shadow from a world I didn't know existed. Such loyalty. Admirable. But tonight, Nicola, is about more than loyalty. It's about belonging. Take your time. They'll be here when you're ready to grow up. I excused myself and retreated to a deserted balcony. The cool night air hit my face like a slap. Below me, Belgrade sprawled like a tapestry of shimmering lights, oblivious to the darkness brewing in this mansion. I gripped the stone railing until my knuckles turned white. This was the initiation. A glimpse into the veiled hand. I left early, the taste of ash in my mouth. The drive home was a blur. When I finally slipped into bed beside Yelena, she was a serene angel, sleeping peacefully. I lay awake for hours. The image of those 3 women burned into my mind. I realized then that I wasn't just a politician anymore. I was a target. The next morning, the sun felt like a harsh interrogation lamp. Yelena sensed it immediately. You're quiet, Nicola, she observed over coffee. Her eyes were sharp. Something happened. Just political maneuvering, I lied. The words felt heavy, like stones in my mouth. Nothing to worry about. Don't lie to me, she insisted, her hand covering mine. Your silences speak volumes. I squeezed her hand, a silent apology. It's bigger than politics, Yelena. Much bigger. It's about the soul of this country. Chapter 3. The Architects of Shadow. I knew I couldn't fight them alone. The veiled hand had been weaving its web for centuries. I needed a team of ghosts. First, I called Sarah. We met in a crumbling cafe in Zeman, where the walls were stained with history and tobacco. She arrived with a stack of ancient books, her spectacles perched on her nose. You look like you've seen a demon, Nicola, she said, her voice calm. I've seen the hand that pulls the strings, Sarah. I told her everything. The women, the offer, the coldness in Marco's eyes. She listened, her fingers tracing the worn cover of a 14th century manuscript. The veiled hand, she murmured. In the archives, they are a myth, a whisper. They say they've shaped every war, every peace, every king, and every president Serbia has ever had. You're not just fighting a cult, Nicola. You're fighting the very architecture of our history. Then we rewrite the history, I said. Next came Dayon, a man whose face was a granite mask of scars and secrets. A former Special Forces operative turned cybersecurity ghost. They operate in the shadows, Nicola. Dayon rumbled as we stood on the banks of the Danube. Then there was Dragana, a tech genius who lived in a world of code and encryption, and Dusan, a journalist who wasn't afraid to bleed for a headline. Our war room was a hidden apartment in an old building overlooking the river. Maps, financial timelines, and cryptic notes soon covered the walls. We stayed up until the sun turned the Danube into a ribbon of gray steel, fueled by black coffee and a desperate, unyielding resolve. Look at this, Dragana said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A shell corporation in Luxembourg. It's funneling millions into Marco's campaign. But the source? It's encrypted with a Roman sigil, a variation used by a forgotten cult. Sarah leaned in. The Order of the Obsidian Sun. They believe power is a divine right, passed down through blood and shadow. We were no longer just a resistance. We were a surgical team, ready to cut out a cancer that had been growing for 1,000 years. To reach the 60-minute mark, the narration needs to be rich in atmospheric detail, internal monologue, and slow burn tension. Here is the massive expansion of the story in English, continuing from Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Middle Act, The Invisible War. The weeks that followed were a descent into a world that exists in the periphery of our vision. We lived in the war room, a space that smelled of ozone, burnt coffee, and the stale anxiety of people who know they are being watched. Our first strike was against their finances. Dragana had found a digital pulse ghost in the machine. A series of high-frequency trades that shouldn't have been possible, all originating from a server farm hidden beneath a textile factory in Pansevo. They aren't just stealing money, Nicola, Dragana whispered, her face pale in the blue light of the monitors. They are manipulating the value of the dinar in real time. They create a crisis on Monday so they can sell the solution on Tuesday. It's a closed loop of misery. We hit the factory at 3 a.m. Dayon moved like smoke. There were no guards, no dogs. The veiled hand didn't use muscle, they used silence. When we breached the server room, the air was freezing. Row after row of black towers hummed with the secrets of a nation. As Dragana began the data siphon, I stood guard. I felt the weight of the building above me, the weight of 1 million lives being bought and sold in nanoseconds. I have it, Dragana gasped. I have the ledger. It's not just Marco. It's the chief of police. It's the head of the National Bank. It's everyone. But the hand struck back. 2 days later, Dusan's apartment was leveled by a gas leak. He survived, but he was a broken man, his body a map of burns. Then, the messages started appearing on my phone. Photos of Yelena. Yelena at the market. Yelena sleeping. Yelena, oblivious to the wolf at her door. The psychological toll was suffocating. I couldn't tell her. Every time I looked into her eyes, I saw the life I was destroying by trying to save it. I was becoming a ghost in my own home, a man who checked for tripwires before kissing his wife. Chapter 5. The Climax, The Descent into the Abyss. The climax began with a single, cryptic text from Marco. The roots are calling. Come to the center of the world, or the surprise for Yelena will be delivered tonight. The coordinates led us to a nondescript manhole cover behind the Church of St. Mark. Dragana had discovered that the church was built over a nexus of Roman tunnels, a labyrinth that the veiled hand had converted into their sanctum. This is it, Dayon said, checking his suppressed sidearm. The point of no return. Once we go down there, the law doesn't exist. Only the dark. We descended. The air changed instantly. It was thick, damp, and tasted of ancient limestone and copper. The walls were lined with bricks that had seen the fall of empires. As we moved deeper, the modern hum of Belgrade faded, replaced by a rhythmic, low-frequency thrumming that made my teeth ache. We reached a massive, circular chamber. It was lit by torches that cast long, flickering shadows against tapestries of the obsidian sun. Around a stone table sat the 12. They were silent, their faces hidden by hoods of heavy, black silk. Marco stood at the center, holding a ceremonial blade. "You are late, Nicola," Marco's voice echoed, stripped of its political charm. It was raw and jagged. "But the initiation requires a sacrifice. You thought you could expose us? We are the exposure. We are the truth that humanity is too weak to handle." "I see a group of old men hiding in a basement," I said, my voice steady despite the hammer of my heart. "I see a coward who threatens women because he's afraid of a free people." The hoods turned toward me. The pressure in the room shifted. Dayon raised his weapon, but out of the shadows, figures emerged, the guests from the party. The women in midnight silk. They weren't escorts. They were the hands enforcers, moving with a predatory grace that wasn't entirely human. "Kill the light," I screamed. Dragana, from the surface, tripped the grid. The sanctum plunged into absolute darkness. The chamber turned into a symphony of violence. The hiss of suppressed gunfire, the clash of steel, the guttural roars of men fighting in a tomb. I lunged for Marco. We collided in the dark, tumbling over the stone altar. He was surprisingly strong, fueled by a fanaticism I couldn't comprehend. "You can't kill us," he hissed, his hands tightening around my throat. "We are Belgrade." I felt my vision blurring. My lungs screamed for air. Then, I felt it in my pocket, the silver pin. The sigil of the Zmija. I jammed the needle-sharp point of the pin into Marco's neck. He let out a choked gurgle and collapsed. Above us, the bells of the church began to toll. Not for a funeral, but as a signal. Jasmina had successfully broadcast the ledger to every news outlet in Europe. The secrets were out. The dark was being flooded with light. Chapter 6. The Resolution, the Aftermath. The sun rose over Belgrade the next morning, but the city felt different. The air was colder, crisper. The news was a landslide of scandals. The chief of police had fled. The head of the National Bank was found dead in his office. Marco was in a coma, a prisoner of his own secrets. I returned home. The apartment was quiet. Yelena was standing on the balcony, her crimson silk robe fluttering in the wind. She didn't turn around when I entered. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now," I said. I stood beside her. Belgrade sprawled beneath us. Belgrade sprawled beneath us, beautiful and scarred. We had won, but the cost was etched into my soul. My team was scattered. Dayon had vanished into the mercenary underworld. Sarah had gone into hiding in a mountain monastery, and Dusan was still fighting for his life. I looked at my hands. They were clean, but they felt heavy. I realized then that the veiled hand was right about one thing. Power is a burden. I had saved the country, but I had lost the man I used to be. The Belgrade sun hit the horizon, a gilded disk. But as I watched it, I didn't see the gold. I saw the shadows it cast, long, dark, and permanent. I held Yelena close, knowing that from now on, every sunrise was just a countdown until the dark returned. Because roots that deep never truly die. They just wait for the next season. The end.